Lucchese Vic Amuso, 88, argued in court filings last week that his killer history, which included ordering 9 hits and 3 attempted murders between 1988 and 1991, shouldn't factor into whether he's allowed to die in dignity, surrounded by family. Simply put, justice is not built on getting even, and punishment need not be aimlessly held in perpetuity because it was once a legally justifiable result, Amuso's lawyer Anthony DiPietro wrote in a filing last week. DiPietro took particular issue with prosecutors' allegations in a filing earlier this month that Amuso, who has been behind bars for 32 years, would still be a threat to the community because he still runs the Lucchese crime family. Prosecutors based that allegation in large part on testimony by Mafia turncoat John Panisi, who said that Amuso was still in charge and set up a leadership change in the crime family through a series of coded letters in 2017. Panisi never met or spoke with Amuso, DiPietro said, adding, he apparently suffers mental delusions and had claimed that the spirit of his deceased loved ones had provided him a message, by shaking the structure of his home and the dishware therein for hours on end, to cooperate with the FBI. In April 2021, Panisi said he asked his dead grandparents for a sign as he fretted about becoming a government informant, and he got one. I didn't live by a train station. There was no planes flying around. It was an earthquake, he said. Everything was shaking in the house, like ding 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 ding. This went on for hours. Amuso is seeking release under the First Step Act, saying that he's a changed man facing down his mortality and deteriorating health, including chronic arthritis so painful he needs a wheelchair to move, clouded vision and the loss of all his teeth. The government's opposition provides no convincing reason as to why an elderly and ailing prisoner, after serving an extremely long term of imprisonment, must medically suffer and ultimately perish in a prison cell when the court possesses the perfect power, provided by the First Step Act, to compel the end-of-life care of such a prisoner to his family, DiPietro wrote. Federal prosecutors argued this month that no compelling and extraordinary circumstances exist for Amuso's release, but even if one did, his many crimes were too ruthless to consider it. The murderous means that Amuso employed to reach his criminal ends weigh heavily against any form of compassionate release and, in the government's estimation, prosecutors wrote. Amuso's significant sentence was consistent with the seriousness of his crimes and reflects the heartlessness that Amuso routinely employed as the boss of the Lucchese crime family. Brooklyn federal judge Frederick Block will decide on Amuso's motion. Here's background on Little Vic. Born 1934. A New York mobster and, as of 2007, was the reputed boss of the Lucchese crime family. A soldier for mobster Crazy Joey Gallo, Amuso defected to the Lucchese crime family sometime in the early 1970s. On December 21, 1972, Amuso was arrested by police outside the house on Morgan Avenue, a front for the Bronx Connection kickback scheme selling prison paroles for as high as $20,000 to prison inmates. Presumably to meet with the building owner Richard Curo, a city corrections officer and Lucchese associate who acted as liaison between inmates and the Luccheses, Amuso was in possession of a switchblade and a file folder of parole documents at the time of his arrest on December 21, 1972. Less than 5 years later, Amuso was arrested with 2 associates for his involvement in a drug trafficking ring to smuggle heroin from Far East Asia on May 30, 1977. At the time of the Brooklyn mobster's arrest, he had been found with 3 pounds of heroin in his possession. When Anthony Corallo, head of the Lucchese family, decided to step down as boss, he handpicked Amuso and Anthony Casso as boss and underboss after his protege, Buddy Longo, disappeared. Rumor has it Amuso, then Longo's driver and bodyguard, killed him to gain more power. His reign as boss was one of bloodshed. In the early 1990s, Amuso felt that the New Jersey faction of the Lucchese family wasn't generating the profit that it should be and, coming into serious disagreements with Lucchese capo Anthony Tumac etc. Amuso then gave the order to whack Jersey, meaning that the entire Jersey faction of the family should be eliminated. During the 1980s, Amuso and Casso were indicted as part of a racketeering investigation. Acting on prior knowledge, Amuso and his underboss went into hiding. After the government apprehended both Amuso and Casso, Casso decided to turn state's evidence. Also, Alphonse Little Al Darko, who was Amuso's acting boss at the time, decided to cooperate with the authorities. Darko's testimony proved to be devastating to Amuso's case. The trial ended with a life sentence for Amuso. His underboss Anthony Casso was also sentenced to life imprisonment after failing to uphold his end of the witness deal he struck with the federal government. Amuso is currently serving his life sentence at a high-security federal penitentiary in Inez, Kentucky. Although Amuso is spending the rest of his life in jail, he is still reputed to be the official boss of the Lucchese family. After his imprisonment, Amuso had a number of acting bosses. Joseph Little Joe DeFee decided after a skirmish with Amuso about the profits that the family was generating that it would be best for him to cooperate with the government. His next acting boss, Louis Bagels Daydon, was convicted for murder charges. He too was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The current acting boss is Stevie Wonder Cray. At the moment he is out of jail and taking control of the family, allegedly at the orders of Amuso.